Greetings. Good evening. I wanted to take this opportunity to sit down and talk a little bit about what I believe is one of the most misunderstood, misapplied pieces of legislation in our government's history today. I'm talking about the Second Amendment in the Bill of Rights. I believe that the Second Amendment is one of the most misunderstood and misapplied pieces of legislation for the fact of that is that anybody and everybody, politicians, judges alike, when they refer to the Second Amendment, they do not refer to the entire amendment. They're, they refer to basically the latter part of the amendment. The amendment in its entirety is as follows, and I'm reciting this from memory. So it says, a well-regulated militia being necessary to the security and safety of a free state, and the right of the public, the right to bear arms, shall not be infringed. Most politicians and judges do not acknowledge that first phrase or those first phrases of this particular amendment. I believe that if we really want to understand the Second Amendment and what its original intent was, we need to go back and look at our history, specifically around the time frame of the creation of the Second Amendment, what was going on, what was the situation at the time, the point of view of one of our country's greatest leaders at the time, and the hidden origin or the origin of where this amendment came from, which there is a predecessor, and we'll talk about that as well. I want to look at some passages of documents in our history and see exactly what was going on and get an idea as to what the intent was from our founding fathers with respect to this very controversial piece of legislation. In order to further understand the intent of this Second Amendment, we need to look at our history. Let us start with what is called the State of the Union as given by President General George Washington in the year of 1791, shortly before the ratification of the Bill of Rights, which was in December of that same year, 1791. Let us look at these passages of history. In this State of the Union, one of the things that the president at the time, General Washington, was concerned about was the situation that had occurred between the U.S., between England, between the tension between these sovereigns. And you have to keep in mind that when he gave this State of the Union, all those issues of tension were already resolved. The country was in a state of peace, I guess you could say. He says the disturbed situation of Europe, and particularly the critical posture of the great maritime powers, whilst it ought to make us the more thankful for the general peace and security enjoyed by the United States, reminds us that at the same time of circumspection, which it becomes us to preserve these blessings. He's saying, okay, given the situation in Europe and the critical posture of the actions that have occurred, it should make us more thankful that we're in a time of peace right now and security that our country is enjoying. But we need to be mindful and remember that we need to do things to preserve these blessings of peace. So he's talking about, we need to pass some legislation or something to further protect this era of peace that we're in. Okay? He also says in this same thing here, it requires us also that we should not overlook the tendency of a war and even the preparations for war among the nations most concerned in active commerce with this country to abridge the means and thereby at least enhance the price of transporting its valuable protections to their markets. So he's saying, okay, we need to